Can you see this?
Absolutely.
Very good. Very good. All right. Storytelling and comics. We all know that storytelling goes back a long time, as long as there's been language. But before there was actually language of people sitting around a fire telling each other stories, there were pictures on caves that actually told a story. I can bet that the people that lived in France 32,000 years ago did not have a really clear spoken language. But they drew pictures on the wall. And if you really look at it, you'll see a bunch of tigers that are chasing a bunch of bison and antelope. And the thing is, those on the right were painted 10,000 years after the ones on the left. So it was a long time story. But the people who lived there wanted to tell a story of where they're at and what they were doing. A few thousand years afterwards in Egypt, the Egyptians invented hieroglyphics, which is a way of telling a story with pictures. And they weren't the only ones around this time. There were people in Africa and Australia and America, and I would bet there would also be people in Asia and India. But then come along, another couple centuries, and we got Batman and Superman. The Superman on the left, Action Comics, June 1938. That's the first time Superman appeared. And if you could find an original now, it would cost about $150,000. They're very valuable. The image on the right is Superman right now, 2003. So you can kind of see that the images have changed. They become more sophisticated, more 3D, and a lot more colorful. But it doesn't stop there. Superman on the left is in Japan. Super on the right is in India. So the comics have been spreading all over the world. And the comics, you have to understand, are a blend of words and images integrated together to tell the story. I know there are comics in India. I looked up, just did comics in India and got the list of images on the top that have some traditional and some modern. And I hear the little guy on the right is Mr. Everyman, and is supposed to be very popular, and he looks very fun. I would probably be reading that. And then this is from one of my last presentations in India about working to save the world. And I can't remember what it says, but I know it was in Indian and Hindi, I think Hindi. And it's one of the modern ways that comics are used in community and society. Okay, when we look at stories, and it doesn't matter what kind of story, and think, stories come in every media. They come in comics, they come in books, they come in short stories, they're on TV, they're in dance. Dance tells a story, music tells a story, and everything works on these three basic building blocks. What a nice classroom. You have a very beautiful classroom.
Yeah. We have I'm really lucky to have this beautiful classroom.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Hi. I'm happy to be.
My name is Navyasri, an 8th grade student. Here my question is, how is the storytelling useful to English teacher?
A lot of research showing that just reading comics below your age group and then to your age group and above it really helps you understand the language and the context of the language, the context of the community and the culture. And if you want to learn even more, you make your own comic. Then you're really forcing yourself to learn the right way to speak, the right way to say something. It's a different thing to just listen. It's like the story of people that come from other countries. They can understand a language before they learn to speak it. When you learn to speak it, you have to form the proper the proper form of the words. You have to really look into your vocabulary. And so it's a really good way to learn. It's a fun way to learn. You know, if you go to the movie theater, all you're doing is watching, which is good. TV is good. But when you're looking at it, you're looking at the words, you're hearing the word in your brain, and then you can say the word out loud to yourself, which is much better way of learning. And then when you write a story, you know, write a 3-panel story. What do you do in the morning? 4 panels. Oh, I get out of bed. I don't want to get out of bed. And then your mother comes and hits you on the head with a sandal. And I go, okay, I'm out of bed now. You know, you can tell a story. And if you tell it in another language, you're learning the language. Does that make sense? Hi.
Good evening, sir.
Good morning to you.
How are you?
I'm excited to be here.
I am so glad today to ask you a question. Here, my question is, what are 3 rules about storytelling?
What are basically what I said? There's an introduction, there's the tension, and then there's the end, the conclusion. So whatever you start, whatever story that you're telling, you generally introduce the characters and then the general idea of what's going on. I like to watch British mysteries on television. At the beginning, you see a couple of the characters, and one of them might get killed. So you know who the people are, you know what's taken place, and when the detectives show up, you know what their job is going to be. Then you go into the next part of the story where the detectives are running all over the place, trying to find clues to figure out who did it. And at the very end is the conclusion. Ah, the baker did it with a big spoon, whatever that may be. So you can use that format of an introduction, the tension, the plot, the action. Even if you're telling the story about I don't know, I keep thinking I see that picture of Mahatma Gandhi. I mean, he's got a gazillion stories. Some of them are beautiful and some of them are you know, his assassination is quite horrible. But you can tell any kind of story because you're not going to tell the story of the world. You're going to tell something that's very focused on a particular area and or a particular idea. So you think about that and you think, who are the people involved? Or what is the thing that's involved? Storytelling.
What makes a good story in storytelling?
Oh, well, that's a really interesting question. What makes a good story in storytelling? Something that's engaging, something that's interesting, something that matches what your goal is. Like, do you want to tell the story to entertain your friends, or do you want to tell a story about the history of your city? Do you want to, you know, you figure out what story that you're telling, and then you know, writing a good story is like writing a good song or doing a good dance or anything. It takes time, a little bit of time, and a little bit of thought. You know, if you do 3 panels about how you wake up in the morning, that doesn't take a lot of thought and a lot of time, but it still takes a certain amount of time based on who you're telling it to and what you're telling it. So it takes some contemplation on what you're doing. Like right now, I've had a very interesting life. I've done a lot of things that are a bit out of the ordinary, and I've been struggling with who I'm going to tell the story to, how I'm going to tell the story, what parts of that story I want to be part of it. You know, maybe I want to do a whole section about what it's like living with a cat and what the cat sees when it looks at me. So I'd start out the story with my cat looking at me, you know, and purring, and I'd make something with my imagination of what the cat is thinking. You know, maybe the cat's looking at me and thinking, when is that guy going to feed me already? I'm hungry. And then I'll go on to the rest of the story. Okay, I got to get the food. I got to open the can. I got to put it in the container. I got to let the cat in and eat it. Then I got to clean up. So but I can do it in a way that's interesting. And one of the best ways of doing it is look at comics that you like or read stories that you enjoy and read different kinds of stories and see how the storyteller, the author, or the comic writer, what is their method? Enjoy.
Thank you so much for your time, valuable time. We really started our day in a great fashion with a lot of inspiring words from you. So I'm sure that my students will definitely take the message straight away from you, and they will hit the libraries, they hit the books from here onwards. But at least one change in one person definitely makes his life a better. Uh, so thank you so much for spending your valuable time with